Efficiency first. Godspeed.
Hello everyone, I'm ImKibitz, and welcome back to Satisfactory. But not the Satisfactory you remember. Because today, we're playing Satisfactory PLUS, a total overhaul mod, which ups the complexity of the game by like 1000%. But Mr. Kibbs here has a lot of experience in this particular video game, so I thought if I gave myself like 24 hours, I could practically beat this silly little mod pack. I was so arrogant and naive, but poor past Kibbs gave it a shot anyway, not realizing how screwed he would be. But it was already too late. In getting started, it didn't seem too different. Just building the main hub like usual. Some extra assembly required though. To do that, you need to upgrade it by collecting iron rods. If nature wouldn't get in the freaking way. But soon I realized there's no iron in the game anymore. There's just stereotyte, which you have to first crush down, and then you turn it into sloppy iron ingots, which then can become iron rods. Well, isn't that annoying? But not too bad. Hub upgrade 2. We want to unlock this stuff called sapphirite, but no biggie probably, just back to hand mining, hand crafting, and GG. That lets us build an equipment workshop and portable miners. So all right, nothing too bad yet. Or so I thought. Because after collecting some sapphirite and tasing some wildlife, it quickly started dawning on me that this mod might be a little complicated. Because you have to crush the sapphirite as well to make the sloppy copper ingots, but then you have to make a copper rod, which then makes wire, which then makes cable. And this is just like the first 10 minutes of the game. How are things gonna look in a few hours? But I pressed on and upgraded the hub to level 3, which is great because that gets us a constructor. So with a smelter and constructor, we could do a little bit of automation. But there was a problem because you can only smelt the crushed ore, not just the raw stuff. So even after getting the smelters, still had to go and handcraft. And then when I wanted to hook the power up, I learned the next fun thing. Screws. There were screws everywhere. Oh, and would you look at that? The constructor also needs screws. Interesting. Well, then I don't want to deal with any of that stuff yet. I want to unlock a crusher. But that only digs the rabbit hole deeper, because then you get rubite and tin. There's tin in the game now. But I thought we could at least use this stuff to make concrete for foundations. But then I quickly learned that no, actually, the rubite isn't used for concrete at all. You have to make crushed stone out of the stereotyte, and the crushed stone becomes concrete. Isn't that just fantastic? It's not like we needed the iron ore stuff for anything else, right? Oh, but that's okay. We're upgrading the hub. That means we get the crusher thing. That means automatic mining. And everything's gonna be perfect. Oh no, I lied. We need to get a modular miner first. But at least we had the crusher. So how absolutely exciting. We can take the stereotyte and we can put it into the crusher. And then, oh, even at stage 1 of production, there's a byproduct. And you know what that means? That means if the byproduct fills up, the whole machine will stop. Which doesn't seem like a big deal when you just have one crusher, but if you need a crusher for every ore node, oh my gosh, that problem is gonna scale out of control so very quickly. But that's a future Kibbs problem. We have automation now. And after building our first constructor, we could automate iron plates. Except that's what you normally do in a Satisfactory playthrough. This mod though, demands screws. So I wanted to work towards them instead. And that was practically day 1. And for the rest of that night into the next morning, I managed to expand the production quite a bit after a little bit of reorganizing. So we had iron rods, copper rods, and wire, and other early game essentials. Except you know what we didn't have? We didn't have any power. Because since there are so many extra stages in production of even the most basic things, you need to build just that many more machines. And in the early game, you get 2, count them, 2 biomass burners, which aren't very good. So not only do you have to run around collecting, organics, but I'd regularly have to pick and choose like, hey, what machines should I just keep off for a little while to not blow up the power grid, which is only a little annoying. But you know, whatever, just early game stuff. We're gonna fly through this phase, no problem. Because over the night, I got the next hub upgrade, which got modular miners, and then I gathered enough material for hub upgrade 6, which has wind turbines, which I thought was like, oh yeah, infinite energy, GG. Please, take my resources. Give me the power. But there was a catch, because even though we could build a wind turbine, which could potentially get us 10 megawatts for free, I didn't realize that it wasn't gonna be so simple. The wind turbines produce more power when they're higher up, but also the wind is variable. So sometimes you'll have like 5 megawatts, sometimes you'll have 2. So if I base my whole power system off of wind, the grid would shut down every so often, which meant that we're gonna go back to biomass burners. Good thing is though, they actually have an entrance into them, so you can automate the process quite a bit. Another cool thing are the modular miners. They have a water input, so that means they probably can be upgraded. And not only that, but they have 2 outputs. So when they're upgraded, you can get a lot of stuff. Just gotta remember the mine head, which needs portable miners, which I need to handcraft. But no biggie, because automation is on its way, I thought. No, actually, the power thing's a bug whenever you put the mine head on those things. It just says the power's gone out, but it's not. We're all good. And I could focus up on the next couple goals, like simple logistics, mergers and stuff. But oh wait, what's that? A tin sheet. Who's this? Iron sheet. What? Oh yeah, if there weren't enough intermediaries before. Oh boy, there's so much more. There's tin rods, there's iron sheets, copper sheets, tin sheets, everything. There's wire out the wazoo, copper bustas, and don't forget screws. You always need screws. The modular miner needs them. The mining head, oh yeah, crusher, still needs them. This entire mod pack relies all around screws. Even the belts. The belts need screws. Why do you need screws in this? I don't know. The conveyor pulls, screws. It's insane, and it only gets worse. So looking at the old tech tree here, simple logistics seems cool and all. Glass, we're not gonna mess with glass. Kind of my order of operations in my head was we want destruction of nature for the chainsaw and solid biofuel, or the bio nuggies. Because with enough power, we don't have to worry about expanding all too much. And more importantly, I can stop running around collecting leaves, which is really, really annoying. But once we had the power nuggies and the chainsaw, everything would be fine, right? No, it was not all fine. Well, it was a little bit better. Automated at least the leaf processing, so we could make that into the biomass and then the biofuel and feed that into some machines. All that we really still needed was splitters. Once we had those, we could set up a proper factory and live our best lives. As with splitters, you can make the ratios from the mining machines to the constructors and all that. And most importantly, you can make an overflow system of splitters to feed bio nuggies to all the bio plants you want. But oh wait, what's that? It takes a conveyor belt to make a splitter? A simple conveyor? Who's the new friend? Who invited them? How do you make a simple conveyor? It just takes a reinforced iron plate. Just another production chain for the pile, right? Right. Big picture here, we now had a reliable power source, and I didn't need to worry about wind stuff. And we're good to expand and build a proper factory that actually uses automatic mining. So how the process works is you build the miner, you build the crusher, you send the stone off to somewhere else, take the crushed material, put it into the smelter to make some slop, and then you construct the 1,000 different parts. Which brings us proudly to day 3, where my goodness, things actually kind of look okay now. We have bio nuggies out the wazoo. We're able to construct concrete so the stone doesn't clog up the machines. And all of the different iron parts have been automated, from screws to rods to plates, and then all of the weird new stuff. With all the automation, I was able to craft a bunch more wind turbines, which really helped out with the power. But most importantly, I was going a little screwy with the messy factory we had, and a little organization goes a long way towards my mental health. Until my brain kind of snapped, realizing I had to do this exact same process all over again, but for the copper over there. But you know, setting up the iron was good practice, and the process is not too bad. Start with miner, we start with the crusher, a couple smelty lads, and then construct like a million different parts. Belt it up, belt it all down, and that's copper automated, baby! and 1 more hour of my life gone. After feeling a little comfortable with that, it was time to get into ore sorting, which gets us into the tin and lead tech tree, introducing a new machine called a sorter. So miner, crusher, sorter, then spaghetti. Because over in the sorter, you get crushed tin, crushed lead, and yes, more stone. And like copper and iron, those materials become ingots. Then the whole slew of regular subjects, like plates, and sheets, and more plates. And don't you dare forget about tin wire. Don't you ever forget about the wire. There's so much wire. But it was all in a good day's work. Things were actually still quite organized. But you know what would really help with organization? That's right, foundations, base building. So I researched that and I was thinking, oh boy, let's build a proper factory now. But the sickos killed my power grid and also made the foundations cost screws. Oh my gosh, just like everything else. So if you want to build like a little 10 by 10 grid, that's gonna be like 200 screws or something like that. Isn't that grand? So yeah, we're building on the ground for a long time. Like even after all I've automated, I've still had to go back and keep handcrafting screws because my poor one machine can't keep up. Half because the system is small, half because the power grid keeps going down because the wind isn't in our favor. Wind, come back. Oh, we're so back. All right, Mr. Bean, you know what time it is? It's time for a more advanced factory. Once I fix the power grid. All right, it's time for improved manufacturing. Oh my gosh. After 100 hours of handcrafting. Let's launch it and build ourselves our first assembler. After more handcrafting, but we need lead sheets. Which you'd think Pascabe's automated, but nope, he left it there on a pillar. Out of spite and total overwhelm by the amount of nonsense that I've been dealing with this entire time. See, I'm not going crazy, you're going crazy. But in reality, I was just kind of losing it because at this point, I thought we'd have coal power and the space elevator and all this jazz, and we can't even build on foundations yet, which had things a little off schedule. And now to progress, either I had to handcraft more lead sheets or I had to wait. And I have done more handcrafting than I've done in years. So, side project adventure time. Checking out the MAM. Why don't I get power slugs? Oh, because they're actually a whole new mod with DNA researching. What the heck is a time crystal? And you know, I kind of realized maybe I don't want to know what half these things are. So I abandoned the MAM for quite some time. Instead, I want to go around and look for more sapphirite, or the copper stuff. And there is a bunch way down the hill here. And the terrain is super flat, so it'd be easy to bring a bunch of belts this way too. And even set up more wind turbines for extra power. Just had to cause a little bit of cardiac arrest in the local wildlife, and we'd be set. Oh, but the material struggles, always there. But their little loot boxes kind of hidden around the world, so they kind of helped out a bit. After a few hours though, we got the materials back to the hub, but things took a little longer because the alpha hogs were buffed. So for the entire day, I fought this monster with my little beginner taser, jumping back and forth between building the belt and fighting it off, which eventually I defeated because I am a champion. I murdered it. Big thing was though that all of the materials were brought back to base, meaning we had extra copper stuff, and I decided to make more iron plates because oh boy, I was using a lot of them, and the place was becoming total spaghetti. But then that got us to our first assembler, and we could automate rotors. Our first kind of like advanced part. How exciting. But what's not as exciting is I learned a terrifying truth that shook my reality to its core, and that's that there's a limit to how many renewable energy sources you can have. Hooray! Finally, after having a nice organized base and all of these resources, I can't build any more free power. Great, fantastic, okay. More bio-nuggy production it was then. But anyway, now that we had the power and the assemblers, we could assemble a lot of stuff, and we could make a new item bus, which would come in extremely useful, especially as we moved forward. But it's as simple as they get. The items go in, they go a little up if they need to go into the next machine, go back down, join the main bus, yada yada, makes room for everything. And I went and automated all of the assembly parts, like modular frame, reinforced iron plates, and the quote-unquote simple conveyors. The best thing was, though, is that I researched this better biomass energy tech, It gave us like copper pipes and a boiler, heater, MV generator, biowater. No more infinite fields of biomass generators. Almost. Because the deal is, you scan for the biological water and it has little biological water wells that are kind of dotted all around the map. And all you had to do to collect it was put this little pump jack on there, and you're off to the races. The biological water goes into not a fluid packager, but a fluid conditioner. And if you feed it a little bit of crushed stone, it can filter out biomass and leaves. You also get some water as well, which will probably help in the future. But for now, we have to keep flushing it, or the machine would back up. Oh, and the other little problem is that the leaves and the biomass leave on the same belt. So what does that mean? Well, I could build a whole new field of biomass generators running off of the leaves and biomass, or I could detour and tech all the way into the Caterium tech tree to hopefully get a smart splitter, which can split both of those things up, and then we could craft those materials into the biofuel and then have a proper, unmanaged power plant. And you better believe that was the path Mr. Kibitz chose. So after unlocking Caterium, or Satmonium in the MAM, it's time to get the party started and set up our production line for it. We just had to build a new factory way over here. And so goes another day of my life. Collecting the ore, bringing the power up, and then processing it. And like everything else, processing isn't too bad. Just crush it up, smelt it down, and then process the Caterium stuff into all manner of things. Like Caterium rods, quick wire, and oh, of course, don't you dare forget that Caterium sheets and plates were just on the horizon. Well, that's okay, because we are just one step away almost from getting the smart splitters, which would lead to the infinite power and peace in the universe. That was just the motivation I needed to survive, to thrive, and mentally prepare me for all the belt work of getting all the Caterium stuff back to kind of base over here. By the way, you might be wondering what all that is when we have most of our stuff over that way. Well, all of this is actually just to get enough crushed stone for our processing over there. Then we also needed some necessary materials to turn the goodies over here into the precious AI limiters. So the Caterium sheets, tin wire, boom, the power. Which means it's time for unlimited nothing. I forgot we needed bronze beams. And to make the bronze, we have to set up a whole new factory with foundries, oh boy. Because for the bronze, you need copper and tin ingots. But all the copper and tin in this area was being used up in my hub here. But in the new factory area where we have the AI limiters, I had already gotten some tin automated because we needed some of the other stuff to make the limiters, right? So easy. Just siphon some of this off, and all we need now is copper. And even better, there's some free copper nodes like right next door to that tin factory. So the problem was practically solved for us. What a genius plan. Project is done, right? No. Instead, I built the entire system over there, which doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But in the back of my head, I was like, oh boy, I finally have enough materials to afford some foundations. Maybe over for bronze here, I could build a proper normal factory on foundations with walls, and later in the future, I can delete everything else I've created and replace it with a nice, clean, organized factory, and it'd be so nice. We'll have to wait and see if that actually becomes a reality. Step one was solving the power issue forever. Because now we could get the smart splitters and build the super power plant. Just needed a bunch of quick wire, then salvation awaits. That was so satisfactory. And it was go time. Time to find all of the bio water I possibly could to harvest and bring back to our new power plant area. And after 14 hours, everything was set and ready to go for a supermassive power plant. Except for the power itself. Gots to have power to make power, eh? Oh, wait. Oh no. Doesn't matter, it was something to figure out later. Right now, I'm super proud of my nice, clean setup with all of the water filter things. The ratios were all good. Long story short, all of the biomass would go out through the front through a smart splitter, where the leaves will go forward into a bunch of constructors, which will turn them into biomass. And then the biomass will come from the splitter there and the constructors over to this area and become bio-nuggies. And the bio-nuggies go and feed the power plant stuff. And how does this all work? Glad you asked. Step 1, you build a boiler platform. Add on a biomass heater, which eats the nuggies. Then kill the annoying hog so you can think. Add on the boiler on top of the heater to boil the water, which converts the water into steam, and then using a converter platform, you convert the steam via a turbine into 150 megawatts of power through a generator, just so long as you clear out the steam when it's a byproduct, in a steam cooling tower, and then get rid of the CO2 from burning the biomass in a handy dandy CO2 chimney. And that's it. Only thing to worry about is making sure that the water going into the boiler is enough to handle the water in these fluid conditioners. So the fluid conditioners make the water, right? And so we don't have to constantly flush. We want that water to be used up by the boilers. With the plan set, just had to figure out the power grid. And by figure out the power grid, I mean cut half of it off. Then after spending the rest of the day organizing and preparing, the bio-nuggie setup was ready to go. Oh my god. Almost. Just had to chop up a few extra power cables. And then finally, after 15 hours, I didn't have to go around collecting leaves anymore. I was free. We had the biomass all fully set up. Nuggies for days, the ratios done perfectly, and our first steam power setup was operational. And how did the power look after all of this nonsense? Well, actually, not super good, but better. Except it only made me want more. Because we already had infrastructure over by a water source, it made a lot of sense to me to build a huge power plant over this way. And oh, I meant huge. Because I was entirely done with messing around with power outages and power grid failures. No, this was gonna last us at least a few hours. Because each of these turbines here makes 150 megawatts each, and with all the water and all of the little nuggies that we have collected and automated, it allowed me to run almost 24 of these power plants, which should equate to a lot of power. At least in like an hour, because it takes time for the water to actually boil and for the temperature to rise so the boiler can actually, you know, make steam. And then once there's a sufficient amount of steam, that gets the turbine running, and all of that takes time, and you know, times that by a lot, and that kind of means you're not getting your power for a hot minute. Which was fine by me because we had so much more stuff to do, like researching, stuff like pants, and critically, advanced parts, which would have been really fun to mess with immediately if Kibitz had remembered to actually automate those plate things. Instead, he made bronze pipes and never stored any bronze plates anywhere. Which means back to handcrafting. And at this point, I'd probably spent like 2 hours handcrafting total so far. There's just so much nonsense. But that's okay, because now my dreams could be real. I always wanted to build this space elevator. And you know, I thought I'd be able to do that like 10 hours ago, but maybe within the 24 hours now. This is the new goal. And we were so close. Just hopefully the advanced parts aren't too advanced. Did they have any chill? Bronze frame, bronze beams and screws, no biggie. And the lead frame that looks horrifically intimidating is just plates and screws as well. All right, concerningly simple. So from the spaghetti, I wrangled a bunch of belts and brought them over to a new kind of main assembly line so that we could get enough of them and then get to the next phase of automating the smart plates, the first space elevator part. But that needed like a bunch of zinc. And how do you make zinc? In a sorter. And what do you do with the sorter? You take the sapphirite and put it into the sorter. And that gets you zinc, which is fine. except for the small crushing reality that everything I'd set up would had to be redone because we need to get the copper into a sorter system. And I really didn't want to have to reset up everything again. So in classic Kibitz fashion, I ignored that problem and looked into another, which was crushed magnesium. So I spent a day and a bit expanding our bronze factory and looking into the magnesium stuff. And it's pretty similar to the copper tree now, except instead with the stereotyte, or the iron stuff. Where the iron stuff now goes into a crusher, then into a sorter, and then you get your magnesium and more crushed iron. And magnesium can be mixed with a bunch of stuff later on, but at least in the interim, it can be used to make even more iron ingots. So like a way more efficient setup. But you have to build foundries. But still really cool, and once all that was done, I had a bunch of extra iron, and I was able to make more reinforced iron plates and modular frames. So hey, fun little side quest. But main quest-wise, it just so happened there was also a copper ore vein here, or sapphirite vein, that we were able to turn into zinc. So after a lot more processing, we got some of the green plates now. Well, actually, a lot of them. And we'd have more, except our byproduct of copper isn't being used, thus stalling the whole system. But we'd be able to deal with that soon. But right now, it was time to finally build the space elevator. And had to build a giant platform for that, of course, right? It's a space elevator, for Pete's sake. You can't just build this on the ground. I refuse. But all right, Mr. Bean, behold, the pinnacle of satisfactory technology. Something that could probably easily be done in about an hour. Took me 20, but we made it. The space elevator is complete, and we can explore the future tech. Once the hook comes down to hook us up to the stars. All right, space elevator time. What does it need for the first few stages? Nothing crazy, aside from maybe 1,000 screws, and oh yeah, the smart plating. Something I'd get to in a second. Because we just built a space elevator, come on, it's time for a little reward, right? Wrong, everything needs zinc. But future Kibitz had a plan for it, so no biggie. To struggle through the problems for now, launch the pod and get the awesome sync.
Milestone reached. Funneling execo that.
Thanks, Ada. And thanks for the sync variant. There's like a little storage box, which is really convenient. But the main thing is, the awesome sync would help with every stage of production. You know all those silly byproducts? Yeah, to the sync. And the problem we were dealing with before, with all of the excess copper that I wasn't using, well, to the garbage can. I can get rid of all these random garbage bins I have throughout the world. Because like there was never a solution to all this concrete. I just built a bin and hoped for the best. But now I can just replace all those throughout the world. And there's no stress. So from there, I spent a few hours reorganizing the slop. And then finally addressing the main quest, which is getting a lot more zinc sheets. So I came down here, grabbed the sapphirite, belted it all the way back home, so I could use it to unlock this smart plating tech. The last thing we need for the space elevator. And how hard could that be, right? It'd be fine, I thought. And guess what? It was. Not. It takes zinc plates and bronze frames, stuff we've already automated. But it takes 100 zinc plates to make 5. That's a bad ratio. Really bad, not good. So like, sure, I can just add that to the production line, get it automated relatively quick, but then it's just gonna take forever to actually get the materials. And instead of twiddling my thumbs for an hour while I wait for all the smart plating to complete, thought it'd be a pretty good idea to actually look into the MAM. Kind of went through like the one tree and abandoned the rest. Like power slugs are way different because you don't actually collect them. You instead gather their DNA. And once you have it researched, you start this entire like slug farming tech tree, which you better believe I don't want to deal with. No, thank you. Oh, and then what's that? Oh, that's just a quantum crystal. I found it on the ground, like literally. That unlocks a whole new thing about like time crystal scanning, a bunch of new power slugs, unlock network tiers, and teleporters apparently. But that's a little beyond the scope today. Instead, I wanted to focus on cryolite. I thought, hey, maybe it unlocks something simple and cool. So I left home and went for an adventure. And look what I found. Dirt, pure dirt. Comes pre-assembled. in a jar. Gibbs now had 6 jars of dirt. I felt like a very wealthy pirate. No, half my journey was to find the cryolite stuff and also just check on other resources in the game, because there's coal in the base game, but I didn't know whether or not it was actually in the modded version or if it was like a whole another thing. Maybe it's a quantum crystal. Literally, who knows? It could be anything. But no, it was just coal, normal coal, all chilling. Oh, and then of course, the second I find some cryolite, it had to be by a bunch of enemies. And I still only had a taser. But after a while, the adventuring paid off, and I found a cryolite vein. It looks like it was a replacement for quartz crystals, which would be exceptionally handy. It's right down the quartz crystal chain. Oh, I thought something different. Instead, it's just nightmares upon nightmares upon nightmares. Ooh, diamonds though. That I also didn't want to deal with. So I just spent the day running back home. And just going through the rest of the tech tree, I found out there's some cool stuff, like the rebar gun and sulfur. Almost forgot about that. And I kinda wish I did, because that machine looks scary. So overall from the MAM, just learned that things get even more complicated. And I checked out the awesome shop. There really wasn't anything new here, so I was like, whatever. Then I made the rebar gun. But most importantly, after that whole day's adventure, coming back to base, I found that we had all of the smart plating available and ready to go for the next tier of the space elevator. So load, seal, and send it. So overall, not too bad. Only took like 22 hours-ish. But you know, I wanted to see how far I could get in 24. So at first I was like, maybe I can get to tier 5, 6? No. But then what if we could get coal power, I thought. Oh yeah, we have the new tech, we can get coal power. And yes, there was actually coal power. A coal heater, but it needed stadors and steel screws. And how do you get steel? Well, for molten steel. And you get that through learning about molten metals in a blast furnace. And then casting those molten metals in a solidifier and cooler. Also there's brass. Because why not? So over the next 2 hours, I automated all of the basics around the blast furnace. Yes, this is the basics. This is the simplest blast furnace setup you can possibly do. Whereas in the base game, you get coal and you get iron ingots, you put them in a foundry, and you're done. But no, you do all of this and you only get one of the steel items. So I guess technically, actually, this isn't the most basic steel setup. This is like half of it. Oh, that's fun. There's a lot of stuff that I learned though. Like in the blast furnaces, they make slag that you just have to get rid of. Kind of like the crushed stone in the rest of the game. At least with the slag, you can do cool stuff with it, like turn it into cold slag and sulfur for explosives later on, so hey, neat. But for the main goods, the copper, that gets combined with molten zinc and specifically crushed iron to make the brass. And yes, you better believe I did make the mistake by not crushing the iron first and wasted a good half hour of troubleshooting wondering, what's going on? How is this not working? Yeah, it needs to be crushed. It has to be crushed. But once you have the goods, practically home free, just go into the solidifier and cooler thing and you make some ingots by inputting a little bit of water and you get a little steam that you have to vent. Oh my gosh, the venting. Yeah, you have to vent not only the steam, but also the CO2. Because I forgot to mention, when you're getting rid of the slag, it makes carbon dioxide, wowee. But back to brass, everything kind of goes back to basics and you just have assemblers and constructors and it's not too bad. Steel, on the other hand, you get the crushed iron to get the molten iron to combine in another blast furnace with coal, which I got from somewhere else. Oh, but don't forget, you need high temperatures, so you have to collect air and send that into the blast furnace as well. But once you cool it off, you finally get your steel product, the steel rods, which get constructed into steel screws. Blast furnaces are crazy. And so was I, because after 24 hours, we ended up right where we started. Screwed. Well, that was that. Gave myself 24 hours, and you know, we'll probably revisit this mod in the future. Also, since we had power practically figured out. But I'd already lost my mind. Well, that's gonna be all for now. But if you enjoyed, remember to subscribe for more. And until next time, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and bye-bye.